The great chamber of the Galactic Council had stood on Nesser Prime for 12,000 years. Its walls were made of a strange metal that glowed with soft blue light. The ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed inside the building. 17 different alien species had built this place together, and they had used it to keep peace across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Ambassador Daniel Porter walked through the massive doors and felt very small. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes, but in this room full of giants and monsters and creatures he could not even describe, he felt like a child. His silver diplomatic uniform was the finest Earth could make, but it looked simple compared to the flowing robes and glittering armor worn by the alien delegates. Daniel had spent 3 years preparing for this moment. He had learned 7 alien languages. He had studied the customs of every council species. He had memorized 10,000 years of galactic history. Earth had chosen him because he was patient, because he was smart, and because he truly believed that humanity deserved a place among the stars. The chamber was arranged in a great circle, with platforms rising up like steps in a stadium. Each platform belonged to a different species. Daniel could see the Thesari on the lowest level, their gray skin and large eyes giving them a wise appearance. Above them sat the Crethini, snake-like beings whose scales changed color with their emotions. Higher still were the Meravi, the Genthan, the Kalari, and a dozen others. At the very top sat the Veloxi. The Veloxi High Speaker was a creature that looked like a giant. Insects standing on 2 legs. His body was covered in black armor that was part of his own skin. His eyes were made of hundreds of tiny lenses that saw in every direction at once. His mouth was surrounded by 4 mandibles that clicked together when he spoke. Daniel had been warned about the Veloxi. They were the oldest species on the council. They believed they were superior to everyone else. They had opposed humanity's petition from the very beginning. "You may approach," the High Speaker announced. His voice was translated by a small device in Daniel's ear, but he could still hear the clicking sounds beneath the words. Daniel walked to the center of the chamber. A small platform rose from the floor to lift him up so that all the delegates could see him clearly. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Daniel began. His voice was calm and steady. "I come before you as a representative of Earth and all human colonies. We seek nothing more than friendship. We seek the chance to learn from your great civilizations and to share what little wisdom we have gained in our short history." He paused to let the translators catch up. Some species processed language more slowly than others. Humanity has existed for only 300,000 years. We have traveled among the stars for less than 2 centuries. We know that we are young. We know that we have much to learn. But we also know that every great civilization was young once. Every species that sits in this chamber today was once unknown and untested. Daniel could see some of the delegates nodding. The Thesari seemed interested. Even the Meravi, who usually showed no emotion, were leaning forward to listen. "We ask only for the chance to prove ourselves worthy of your trust. We ask for enough." The High Speaker's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. Daniel stopped speaking immediately. "The humans presume too much," the High Speaker announced. His mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of anger or contempt. "They have existed for a mere heartbeat of cosmic time. They have conquered nothing of value. They've built nothing that will last. They bring nothing to this council that we do not already possess." Daniel kept his face calm, though his heart was beating faster now. "With respect, High Speaker, we bring friendship. We bring curiosity. We bring the hope that all species can work together for you. Bring infection," spat a voice from another platform. Daniel turned to see the Crethini delegate rising from his seat. The snake-like creature's scales had turned a deep red color that Daniel knew meant hatred. "Your species spreads across worlds like a disease," the Crethani continued. "You breed without control. You consume resources without thought for the future. You fight among yourselves like animals. Council has seen your history. We know what you truly are." "That history is precisely why we seek peace," Daniel replied. "We have learned from our mistakes. We have united as a species." "We have learned nothing," the High Speaker interrupted. "And you will learn nothing here. The Council has already deliberated on this matter." Daniel felt a cold sensation run down his spine. The Council was supposed to hear his full petition before making any decision. That was the protocol. That was the law. I do not understand, Daniel said carefully. The petition process requires the petition process is for species worthy of consideration, the High Speaker replied. Humanity is not worthy. Your presence here is an insult that must be answered. Before Daniel could respond, he felt something lock around his body. He looked down and saw bands of blue energy wrapping around his arms and legs. He could not move. What is this? He demanded, but his voice came out as a whisper. The chamber had gone completely silent. Daniel could see the other delegates watching. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked away. None of them spoke in his defense. The floor beneath Daniel's platform began to glow. He could feel heat rising through his boots. The council finds humanity unworthy of membership, the High Speaker announced in a formal tone. The council finds the human petition to be an act of arrogance. The council sentences the human ambassador to death by plasma fire as a warning to his species. You cannot do this, Daniel said. His voice was stronger now, though he could feel sweat forming on his forehead as the heat increased. This violates every law of diplomacy. This is murder. This is justice, the High Speaker replied. Your species will watch. They will understand their place in the cosmic order. They will learn to fear the council. Daniel looked around the chamber one last time. He saw that the sorry delegate turn away. He saw the Crethani watching with obvious pleasure. He saw dozens of other species, all of them silent, all of them complicit. He thought of his wife Maria, waiting for him back on Earth. He thought of his daughter Susan, who had just started university. He thought of all the hopes he had carried into this chamber. We're making a terrible mistake, he said quietly. The High Speaker laughed. A horrible clicking sound that echoed through the chamber. You are the ones who made a mistake. You thought you could stand among us as equals. You thought your little species mattered. You were wrong. The plasma fire came from below. Daniel did not scream, stood straight and tall until the very end, his eyes fixed on the High Speaker. The burning was broadcast to every human colony across 300 worlds. The council made sure of that. They wanted humanity to see their ambassador die. They wanted humans to understand that they were nothing. They wanted Earth to submit to fear. They did not understand humans at all. On Earth, in homes and offices, in military bases, 300 billion people watched Daniel Porter die with dignity and courage. They watched the aliens laugh. They watched 17 species stand by and do nothing while a good man was murdered for the crime of asking for friendship. And in that moment, something changed in the human heart. Something old and terrible woke up. Something that humanity had tried very hard to forget. The council had wanted fear. They had created fury instead. 3 days had passed since the burning deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. In a facility that did not appear on any map, Admiral Catherine Shaw sat alone in a dark room. She was 62 years old, with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. She had commanded fleets. She had won battles that saved millions of lives. She had buried friends and enemies alike. None of that had prepared her for this. The footage played on the screen in front of her for the 47th time. She watched Daniel Porter stand with dignity as the plasma fire consumed him. She watched the High Speaker laugh, watched 17 alien species do nothing while a man was murdered. Catherine had known Daniel personally. They had served together 20 years ago before he left the military to become a diplomat. He had believed in peace. He had believed that humanity could find friends among the stars. He had been wrong about many things, but he had been a good man. Now he was Ashdot. Catherine turned off the screen and sat in the darkness for a long time. Then she stood up and walked to the conference room where the others were waiting. The room was full of the most powerful people on Earth. President Nathan Hughes sat at the head of the table. He was only 45 years old, the youngest president in a century, and the weight of the past 3 days showed clearly on his face. Around him sat generals and admirals, scientists and politicians, the people who made the decisions that shaped humanity's future. Admiral Shaw, the president said as she entered. Thank you for joining us. Catherine took her seat without speaking. She looked around the table and saw fear in some eyes, anger in others. Good. Fear and anger were useful emotions when properly directed. We have been discussing our options, President Hughes continued. Secretary Warren has prepared an analysis. Linda Warren was a small woman with sharp features and a sharper mind. She had been a professor of interstellar relations before entering politics, and she knew more about alien civilizations than a nigh-on else on Earth. "The situation is simple," Linda said. "We have no good options." She activated a holographic display showing the known galaxy. Human space was a tiny blue dot compared to the vast territories claimed by Council species. The Council controls 97% of explored space. Their combined military forces outnumber ours by a factor of approximately 10,000 to 1. Their technology is centuries ahead of our own. Our fastest ships would take 3 years to reach their nearest outpost. Their ships could reach Earth in 6 weeks. She paused to let the numbers sink in. Every military analysis we have conducted comes to the same conclusion. If we attempt to fight the Council, we will be destroyed within months. They will burn our colonies one by one until nothing remains of human civilization. So we do nothing? General Marcus Cole demanded. He was a large man with a voice like thunder. We let them murder our ambassador and we just accept it. I did not say we do nothing, Linda replied calmly. I said we have no good options. There is a difference. What options do we have? The president asked. We can make a formal protest through diplomatic channels. The Council will ignore it. We can impose trade sanctions. The Council does not need anything we produce. We can withdraw from all contact with alien species and focus on defending our own territory. The Council will eventually come for us anyway. Silence fell over the room. Catherine watched the faces around the table and saw despair beginning to take hold. There is another option, a voice said from the far end of the table. Everyone turned to look at Dr. Samuel Grant. He was a thin man with white hair and thick glasses, and most of the people in the room did not know his name. He ran a research division that officially studied agricultural technology. Very few people knew what his team actually did. Dr. Grant, the president said slowly, you were not invited to this meeting. No, sir. I invited myself. Given the circumstances, I believe you will forgive the breach of protocol. Samuel stood up and walked to the holographic display. He made a few adjustments, and the image changed. Instead of the known galaxy, it now showed a ship. The ship was unlike anything publicly acknowledged. It was long and angular, covered in black armor that seemed to absorb light. Its design was clearly human, but it looked more advanced than anything the military had ever revealed. This is the Retribution, Samuel said. It is the first of 12 dreadnoughts that my division has been building in secret for the past 50 years. The room erupted in chaos. Questions flew from every direction. How was this possible? Who authorized this? How had it been kept secret? Samuel waited for the noise to die down before continuing. After first contact 50 years ago, a small group of military and scientific leaders came to a conclusion. They believed that humanity would eventually face a threat from the Council. They believed that our public military was insufficient to defend against such a threat. They created Project Prometheus to ensure humanity's survival. 50 years, President Hughes said slowly. 5 decades of building a secret fleet, and no one knew. The project was designed to survive any political changes on Earth. Its funding was hidden in 1,000 different budget lines. Its personnel were recruited from the best and brightest. People who would dedicate their lives to a cause they could never speak about. The ships themselves were built in deep space, in places no Council patrol would ever think to look. Catherine Shaw leaned forward. How many ships? 12 dreadnoughts, 48 cruisers, 200 destroyers, and 150,000 personnel who have trained for this exact scenario. That is still nothing compared to Council forces, General Cole pointed out. Samuel smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Council forces have not fought a real war in 8,000 years. They have forgotten what war means. They have grown slow and comfortable, and they have never faced an enemy like humanity. He changed the display again, showing technical specifications that made several of the military officers gasp. Our ships are faster than anything the Council possesses. Our weapons are based on technology they have never seen. We have spent 50 years studying their defenses and finding weaknesses. We cannot win a prolonged war. but we can strike hard enough to make them regret what they have done." President Hughes was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with the weight of the decision he was about to make. "If we do this, there is no going back. The Council will know that humanity is a threat. They will come for us eventually." "They're coming for us anyway," Catherine said. Everyone looked at her. "They burned our ambassador to teach us fear. When we do not show fear, they will try again and again, until we either submit or fight back." She stood up and looked around the table. "Daniel Porter was my friend. He believed in peace. He died hoping that his death would not be used to justify war. But he also believed that humanity deserved to exist. He believed that we had a right to stand among the stars. The Council has shown us that they will never accept us peacefully. They see us as inferior beings to be controlled or eliminated. We have two choices now. We can hide in our little corner of the galaxy and wait for them to come for us. Or we can show them what happens when you underestimate humans." The president looked at the faces around the table. He saw determination replacing despair. He saw anger being shaped into purpose. "How long until the fleet is ready?" he asked. Samuel Grant checked his watch. "It has been ready for 15 years, sir. We were just waiting for the order." President Hughes closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his decision was made. Give the order. In the cold darkness between stars, where no light reached and no sensor could detect movement, humanity had hidden its greatest secret. Captain Henry Mason stood on the bridge of the Retribution and looked out at the endless black. He was 53 years old, with a face weathered by years of training in conditions that would break most men. His uniform was plain black, with no rank insignia visible, because officially he did not exist. None of them did. 15 years ago. Henry had been a promising young commander in the Earth's fleet. He had a beautiful wife named Carol and a young son named Timothy. He had a future full of possibility. Then, a man in a gray suit had visited him and asked if he was willing to give up everything to protect humanity. Henry had said yes. He had never seen his family again. As far as they knew, he had died in a training accident. There had been a funeral with an empty coffin. His wife had remarried 5 years later. His son had grown up believing his father was dead. This was the price that everyone in Project Prometheus had paid. They had given up their lives, their families, their names. They had become ghosts, existing only in classified files that would be destroyed if the project was ever discovered. But they had never forgotten why they were here. Status report. Henry ordered. Commander Lisa Chen turned from her console. She was his executive officer, a woman who had given up a promising career in xenobiology to serve in the shadows. "All 12 dreadnoughts report ready, Captain. Cruiser and destroyer squadrons are in formation. Total combat strength is fully operational. Communications? Secure channels are open to all ships. Earth Command confirms the operation is authorized at the highest level." Henry nodded slowly. He had waited 15 years for those words. Part of him had hoped this day would never come. Another part had known it was inevitable. "Open a channel to the fleet," he ordered. Lisa worked her console, and a soft tone indicated that 30,000 people were now listening to his words. Henry took a deep breath before speaking. He had prepared his speech, but now that the moment had come, he found himself setting it aside. These were not people who needed fancy words. They needed truth. "You all saw what happened 3 days ago," he began. "You saw Ambassador Daniel Porter stand before the Council and ask for nothing more than friendship. You saw them laugh at him. You saw them burn him alive while 17 species watched and did nothing." He paused, letting the memory fill the silence. "The Council did that because they believe we are weak. They believe that because we sought peace, we are incapable of war. They believe that 300 years of human spaceflight means nothing compared to their 12,000 years of civilization." Henry walked slowly across the bridge, looking at each crew member in turn. They have never seen humans at war. They have read our history, but they do not understand it. They see that we fought among ourselves for thousands of years, and they think this makes us primitive. They do not realize that those wars taught us lessons that peaceful species never learn. We know how to fight when everything is lost. We know how to sacrifice for each other. We know how to take pain and turn it into strength. We know how to face death without flinching. His voice grew harder. The council species have known peace for 8,000 years. They have forgotten what it means to struggle for survival. They have forgotten that civilizations can fall. They have grown soft and comfortable and arrogant. We have not forgotten. We have never been allowed to forget. And now we are going to remind the galaxy why humans should never be underestimated. Henry returned to the center of the bridge. In 3 days we jump to council space. We will strike at the heart of their power. We will show them that the species they dismissed as primitives can reach out across the stars and touch him wherever they feel safest. This is not about conquest. We do not want their territory. We do not want to rule them. We want one thing only: justice for Daniel Porter and a warning to anyone who might harm a human in the future. When we are done, the Council will know that attacking humanity has a price. They will know that our reach is longer than they imagined. They will know that mercy and weakness are not the same thing. He let the words hang in the air for a moment. I know what you have all given up to be here. I know the families you left behind, the lives you could have had. Every one of you made the hardest choice a person can make. You chose to disappear so that humanity could survive. Today, that choice is justified. Today, we prove that the sacrifices were worth it. Today, we stop being ghosts and become the sword that humanity needs. Prepare for jump. In 3 days, we write history. He closed the channel and stood in silence for a moment. Around him, his crew went back to work, their faces set with determination. There was no cheering, no celebration. These were professionals who understood the weight of what was coming. Lisa walked over to stand beside him. "Good speech," she said quietly. "It needed to be said. Do you think we can really do this? 12 ships against the entire council?" Henry turned to look at her. "We are not fighting the entire council. We are making a statement. We hit hard, we hit fast, and we disappear before they can respond. By the time they realize what happened, we will be gone. And then what? Then the council has to decide whether to come after us. If they do, they will find that Earth is much better defended than they expect. If they do not, they will spend the next 1,000 years wondering what else we have hidden." Lisa nodded slowly. "Either way, things will never be the same." "No," Henry agreed. "They will not." Over the next 3 days, the Ghost Fleet prepared for the most important mission in human history. Engineers checked every system twice. Pilots ran simulations until they could fly their attack patterns in their sleep. Soldiers cleaned their weapons and wrote letters that might never be delivered. Henry spent much of his time walking through the ship, talking to crew members, answering questions, and providing whatever comfort he could. He knew that some of them would not survive what was coming. He owed them his presence, his attention, his respect. On the night before the jump, he sat alone in his quarters and looked at the only personal item he had brought with him 15 years ago. It was a photograph of his wife and son, taken on a beach vacation when Timothy was 5 years old. Carol was laughing at something just outside the frame. Timothy was holding up a seashell, proud of his discovery. Henry did not know where they were now. He had not allowed himself to check. It was easier that way. He put the photograph away and went to bed. Tomorrow would be a long day. When the fleet jumped to council space, Henry was standing on the bridge with his crew around him. The stars blurred and twisted as the ships entered the strange space between normal reality and somewhere else. For a moment that lasted an eternity, they existed everywhere and nowhere. Then the stars reformed. Desser Prime appeared before them, the seat of galactic power. The heart of the council, the place where Daniel Porter had died. "All ships in position," Lisa reported. "No response from council forces yet. They do not see us." Henry smiled grimly. The council relied on sensor networks that were 8,000 years old. Project Prometheus had spent decades learning how to avoid them. "They will see us soon enough," he said. "Begin the operation." The Ghost Fleet moved forward, and the galaxy would never be the same again. High Speaker Veluxy was in the middle of a routine council session when the alarms began. The sound was something most delegates had never heard before. It was the emergency signal that indicated an attack on Nesser Prime itself. It's a signal that had not been used in 8,000 years. Some of the younger species did not even recognize what it meant. Veluxi's compound. Eyes scanned the holographic displays that suddenly appeared throughout the chamber. His mandibles clicked in confusion as he tried to understand what he was seeing. "This is impossible," he said. The displays showed 12 large ships in perfect formation, moving toward the planet at speeds that should not be possible. Behind them came dozens of smaller vessels spreading out to cover more space. The ships were angular and black, designed in a style that was clearly human but far more advanced than anything in Council records. "Where did they come from?" demanded the Crethany delegate. His scales were cycling through colors so fast that they almost seemed to blur. "Unknown," replied the tactical officer, a young Visari whose gray skin had gone pale with fear. "They appeared without warning. Our sensor networks detected nothing until they were already in the system." "That is impossible," Veluxi repeated. "Humans do not possess jump technology. They do not have ships capable of reaching Council space. Our intelligence services confirm that their military poses no threat. Your intelligence was wrong." The voice came from every speaker in the chamber, every display screen, every personal device. It was a human voice, female, cold, and controlled. Admiral Catherine Shaw's face appeared on the main display. She was standing on the bridge of a warship, surrounded by human officers who watched their consoles with calm professionalism. Her silver hair was cut short, and her eyes held no warmth at all. "Yes. 17 hours ago, we destroyed your listening posts at the Meridian Gap," Catherine announced. 14 hours ago, we eliminated your patrol fleet in the Corvin sector. 9 hours ago, we disabled the defensive platforms protecting this system." The council chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted in a dozen languages. Some demanded immediate military response. Others called for evacuation. The Thessary delegate was already moving toward the exit. Catherine waited for the noise to die down before continuing. "You burned our diplomat," she said. "You broadcast his death to our children. You wanted us to know fear. You wanted us to understand that we are nothing compared to the Great Council." She leaned forward slightly, and her voice grew even colder. "Today you learn what humans do when we are afraid. We do not hide. We do not submit. We do not beg for mercy. We fight. And we do not stop fighting until our enemies understand, truly understand, the cost of threatening our people." Veluxi finally found his voice. "This is an act of war. The Council will respond with the full force of 17 species. Your little fleet will be destroyed and your worlds will burn." Perhaps Catherine replied, "But not today. Today, you will watch while we demonstrate exactly what we are capable of." The human fleet began to move. But instead of heading toward the planet or the council chamber, the ships turned toward the orbital stations where delegates kept their personal vessels. "What are you doing?" the Crethany delegate demanded. "Taking away your escape routes," Catherine said. "You will stay and watch. All of you." The first shots came without warning. Human weapons that the Council had never seen before struck the defensive platforms around the orbital stations. The platforms, which were supposed to be able to withstand any attack, crumbled like paper, but the stations themselves were untouched. Over the next 90 minutes, the human fleet systematically destroyed every military installation in the SR system. They moved with a precision that the Council had never seen, striking targets with weapons that left civilian structures completely undamaged. A weapons platform would be vaporized while a hospital ship 100 meters away remained unharmed. A shipyard would be reduced to debris, while the commercial stations beside it continued operating normally. Communication arrays were destroyed. Command centers were eliminated. Defense stations were turned to ashdot, and not a single civilian died. Veluxi watched in growing horror as the seat of council power was stripped of its defenses. He had underestimated humans badly, but he had also misunderstood them. He had expected them to be barbaric, to strike at civilians, to prove that they were the violent primitives he believed them to be. Instead, they were showing something far more terrifying. They were showing control. Why? He finally asked. Why not destroy everything? Why spare the civilians? Catherine's face appeared on the display again. Because we are not like you, she said. We do not burn ambassadors who come in peace. We do not murder people to send messages. We are capable of mercy, High Speaker. But do not mistake mercy for weakness. She gestured to someone off-screen, and the display changed to show the council chamber itself. We could destroy this world, Catherine said. We have the capability. Every person in that chamber could be dead in seconds if we chose. But we choose not to. Remember that choice. Remember what mercy looks like. And remember what happens if you ever harm another human? Captain Henry Mason stood beside Catherine on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the operation unfold. Everything was going according to plan. The Council fleet was too far away to respond in time. The defensive systems were destroyed. The message was being delivered. The delegates are trying to contact their homeworlds, Lisa reported from her console. They want rescue fleets sent immediately. Let them call, Catherine said. By the time any fleet arrives, we will be gone. Admiral, another officer called out. We are detecting movement from the Veluxy flagship. They are powering weapons. Catherine nodded. She had expected this. The Veluxy were too proud to simply watch their power destroyed without fighting back. Target their weapon systems only, she ordered. Disable them without destroying the ship. I want the High Speaker alive to deliver our message. The Retribution's guns fired once. The Veluxy flagship shuddered as its weapons were surgically removed by fire that passed through its shields like they were not there. Weapons disabled, the tactical officer reported. No casualties detected aboard the enemy vessel. In the council chamber, Veluxy watched his flagship go dark. The greatest warship of the greatest council species, defeated by a single shot from a human ship that was not supposed to exist, for the first time in his long life. The High Speaker felt true fear. Catherine's voice came over the speakers one final time. This is not an invasion, she said. This is a demonstration. You wanted to teach humanity its place in the galaxy. Congratulations, you succeeded. Our place is wherever we choose to stand. Our reach extends wherever we choose to go. Our patience has limits that you do not want to test again. Daniel Porter came to you in peace, asking only for friendship. You answered with fire. Today, we answer with fire of our own. But unlike you, we choose not to burn the innocent. Consider this a lesson, High Speaker. The next time a human comes to you in peace, you would be wise to listen. The human fleet began to withdraw. As quickly as they had appeared, they were gone, jumping back into the space between stars where no council sensor could follow. Behind them, they left the Desser system stripped of its military power. They left the council delegates stranded in their chamber, unable to flee. They left a message written in the debris of destroyed platforms and disabled warships. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy as petitioners. Asking politely for a seat at the table, they had returned as something else entirely. Veluxy stood in the silent chamber and looked at the destruction on his displays. Around him, the other delegates were slowly realizing what had happened. The species they had dismissed as primitives had struck at the heart of council power and escaped without losing a single ship. What have we done? The Thesari delegate whispered. Veluxy did not answer. He was too busy wondering the same thing. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Visser Prime in that time. The galaxy had changed more than it had in the previous 1,000 years. The Council still existed, but its power was broken. The species that had once worked together in arrogance now argued among themselves about what to do next. The Veluxy High Speaker had been removed from power by his own people. The council that had laughed while Daniel Porter burned now faced protests on 100 worlds. Species that had quietly resented council dominance for centuries suddenly found their courage. And in the midst of all this chaos, humanity waited. Ambassador Patricia Webb walked through the corridors of the council chamber on Thesser Prime. She was 47 years old, with dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had spent her entire career in the diplomatic service, working her way up from junior translator to senior negotiator. She had been chosen for this mission because she was smart, tough, and absolutely fearless. She was also Daniel, Porter's niece. The plasma scorches had been cleaned from the floor of the great chamber, but Patricia knew exactly where her uncle had stood. She had watched the recording 100 times, memorizing every detail. She had seen him die with dignity while the galaxy watched. Now she was here to finish what he had started. The chamber was different than it had been 3 months ago. Many seats were empty. The Crethany delegation was absent entirely. Their species having retreated to their homeworld after 3 rival species attacked their colonies. The Veloxi were present, but they occupied a lower platform than before. Their influence diminished. The new high speaker was a Vasari elder named Coordinator Yevish. He was a cautious being who had argued against burning Daniel Porter from the beginning. No one had listened to him then. Now everyone listened. Ambassador Webb, Yevish said as Patricia reached the center of the chamber. "Thank you for accepting our invitation." Patricia looked around at the assembled delegates. She saw fear in many eyes. She saw resentment in others. She saw a galaxy that had been forced to reconsider everything it believed about the order of things. "You asked for this meeting," she said. "Speak." Yevish shifted uncomfortably. The Sari were not used to being the ones who had to explain themselves. "The Council wishes to discuss terms," he said carefully. "We recognize that past actions were regrettable. We seek to establish a new relationship with Earth and all human colonies." Patricia smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "A new relationship," she repeated. "Yes, we have thoughts on that." She activated a holographic display that had been prepared by Earth Command. It showed hundreds of ships departing from human space, heading in every direction across the galaxy. "These are colony ships," Patricia explained. "They carry millions of humans to new worlds throughout what you call council space. Over the next 10 years, humanity will establish settlements on every unclaimed planet that can support human life. That is hundreds of worlds," protested a Merave delegate. "You cannot simply claim them without council approval." "Actually, we can," Patricia replied. "Your patrols will not interfere. Your laws will not apply. Humanity will expand as we see fit, and the Council will accept this because the alternative is a war that none of you want." The chamber erupted in protest, but Patricia waited calmly for the noise to die down. "You had your chance to accept us as partners," she said when the delegates were quiet again. "You chose to murder our ambassador instead. Now you deal with the consequences of that choice." Furthermore, she continued, "Daniel Porter's family will receive compensation equal to the combined economic output of the Veloxi. Homeworld for 1 standard year. This payment will be made within 90 days. "That is impossible," the Veloxi delegate sputtered. "Our economy cannot support such a demand." "Then I suggest you find a way," Patricia replied. "You burned a good man alive to send a message. Now you pay for that message." She paused to let the words sink in. "Finally, the Council will make a public acknowledgement. You will admit that the burning of Ambassador Daniel Porter was an act of murder. You will admit that it violated every principle of diplomacy and civilized behavior. You will broadcast this acknowledgement to every inhabited world in Council space." Yevish's gray face had gone pale. "These terms are unprecedented. The Council has never admitted wrongdoing in its entire history." "Then it is time to start," Patricia said. "You wanted humanity to learn its place. We learned it. Our place is wherever we choose to stand. Our place is equal to any species in this galaxy. Our place is whatever we make it." She looked around the chamber one final time. "You have 3 days to accept these terms. If you do not accept them, we will return to this system with a much larger fleet. And next time, we will not be so careful about civilian targets." It was a bluff. Patricia knew that humanity would never deliberately target civilians. But the Council did not know that. They had seen what human ships could do, and they had no idea what limits humans might or might not have. "We will discuss your terms," Yevish said quietly. "Discuss quickly," Patricia replied. "Humanity has waited long enough." She turned and walked out of the chamber without looking back. 2 days later, the Council accepted all of humanity's demands. The broadcast went out to every world in the galaxy. Trillions of beings watched as the council admitted that burning Daniel Porter had been murder. They watched as the most powerful organization in known space apologized to a species that had existed for less than a cosmic heartbeat. On Earth, people gathered in the streets to watch the broadcast together. They cheered when the apology was read. They wept when Daniel Porter's name was spoken. They celebrated a victory that had been won through strength, but also through restraint. Admiral Catherine Shaw watched the broadcast from her office deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Captain Henry Mason watched from the bridge of the Retribution, still hidden in the darkness between stars. President Nathan Hughes watched from the White House, surrounded by advisors who were already planning for the future. Patricia Webb watched from her quarters on Thesser Prime. When the broadcast ended, she walked outside to the steps of the council building. A statue had been erected there, paid for by contributions from human colonies across 300 worlds. It depicted Daniel Porter in his silver diplomatic uniform, one hand extended in friendship just as he had extended it 3 months ago. At the base of the statue, an inscription had been carved in 100 different languages. The words were simple, but their meaning was clear to anyone who read them. He came in peace. We return for justice. Never again, Patricia touched the base of the statue and thought about her uncle. He had believed in diplomacy until the very end. He had believed that humanity and the alien species could find common ground. He had been killed for that belief, but in a strange way, his belief had been proven right. Humanity had shown the galaxy both its strength and its mercy. They had demonstrated that humans could fight, but also that they could choose not to destroy. They had proven that peace and power were not opposites. The Council had learned a lesson that would shape galactic politics for centuries to come. Humans were slow to anger, quick to forgive, and absolutely unstoppable when pushed too far. They were a species that had spent their entire history fighting themselves, and they had brought all of that terrible experience to bear when threatened, but they had also shown that they were capable of restraint. They had won their victory without killing civilians. They had demanded justice without demanding genocide. They had changed the balance of power without trying to conquer the galaxy. In the weeks and months that followed, human colony ships spread across the stars. Human diplomats established relationships with dozens of species that had never dared to challenge the Council before. Human technology began to change the way the galaxy worked, and in the Great Chamber on Thesser Prime, a new seat was added to the circle of platforms. It was positioned at the same level as the oldest species, the same level as the Veluxi and the Thessari and the other founders. The seat remained empty for now. Earth had not yet decided whether to accept full Council membership. They were taking their time, forcing the galaxy to wait. But everyone knew that when humanity finally took that seat, the galaxy would never be the same again. The Council had burned one man, thinking it would teach humanity to fear instead. They had taught humanity something far more important. They had taught humans exactly how much power they truly had, and now the galaxy would have to live with the consequences.